want to thank everyone for joining us today. Here we are in the latest iteration of our monthly luncheons. Again, are still via Zoom. Unfortunately, I thought that there was an opportunity that maybe we would be able to meet in person for this meeting, but just the clarity wasn't quite there, and unfortunately, we weren't able to pull the trigger. I know that it would be fun to get together, but obviously, in terms of the recent announcement this past weekend from the governor, it probably wouldn't have been a good idea to begin with anyway. So with that, thank you for joining us. I'm Colin Hastings. I'm the Executive Director of the Pasco Chamber of Commerce. And we're excited today to have an update from Pasco Police Chief Ken Roske. And so looking forward to hearing some of the things that they've been dealing with and give us an opportunity at the end of his presentation, I'm sure, to do some question and answer as well too. And I want to thank Kevin Williams at IFC Insurance for being our luncheon sponsor today. He's been real solid with the chamber for many years. As if you heard already, was past president or chair of the Kiwanis, and is the same thing with the Pasco Chamber as a past president. And he still has sway, Mike. So he has sway with the Pasco Chamber. I know we have some elected officials that are joining us here today, or at least they RSVP. They may not have joined us already, but we have Franklin County Commissioner Bob Cook is here. So Bob, if you want to raise your hand, say hi. And then Franklin County Prosecutor Sean Sant is supposed to join us. I don't know if he's jumped in yet or not, but we welcome him as well too. I'm sure after last week's elections and everything else, they're looking forward to everything that's moving forward along those lines. So I do have some updates I wanted to share with the crew before I hand it over to Jason to take us through the rest of the program. But if you missed our last meeting, which I guess was the end of October, we had just announced, I guess that would have been right before Riverfest, our video came out. We created a documentary called Our Rivers, Our Life. As you recall, Riverfest is a community event where we had, over 4,000 families join us last year at Columbia Park. It's an opportunity to engage the community about the importance of the river system that we have here and what it all provides us, and quite a bit of momentum going into our third year of having the event again. Of course, we had to pivot because of COVID. And with that, we still had a lot of our partners that wanted to see something happen this year, and felt like that we got the committee together, Riverfest Committee and the Pasco Chamber Board of Directors, and they felt like if we produced something that could last for a long time, but still send that message out, and maybe we can actually have a bigger impact than we would with our normal Riverfest. And what we came up with was a documentary that we had a company out of Spokane named North by Northwest produce the event. It was a very high quality documentary. If you haven't seen it, it was aired October 27th, or maybe it's the 26th, I can't remember, the days are running together, on KView. And it's an hour-long production, very well done. It turned out much better than I ever had thought and dreamed it would. And it's still living on YouTube, and we also now have a big digital media buy, primarily focused on the I-5 corridor, to get that message out. I think it really highlights some of the important areas like recreation and clean energy and transportation and commerce, and obviously agriculture and irrigation. And it tells a really good story. And so it was really happy that we got it done and that it's out there. And still from that point, we still have some more work to do. As I mentioned, we're targeting the I-5 corridor. We're also going to send it to all the elected representatives that we have in Olympia and even in Oregon. Ironically, the early feedback in terms of our I-5 targeted digital media, some of the most engagements were coming out of Eugene, Oregon. So, and I think that's important to tell our side of what the story is, and having those engagements there in a targeted area like Eugene would be real good. So I'm sure the same thing can be said with Portland and Seattle area and Vancouver too. But we're going to use that as a tool to help educate our elected officials, as well as on top of that, we're going to create a educational type of piece that can be used in the school districts down the line as well too. So we're excited with that and see where it goes. Another thing that I wanted to let the chamber know is that we were asked to participate in helping the Franklin County commissioners and the county to help distribute CARES Act money to businesses that have been struggling, obviously, with the COVID pandemic. And so we were tasked with dispersing $400,000 to businesses that qualify. So we launched that last Wednesday at 10 a.m. And by Friday, about the same time, 48 hours, we had to drop the link just because we had so many applications. I think it really shows the impact that it has, that COVID has had on businesses. Anecdotally, from the applicants that I've seen, a vast majority are minority-owned businesses. A lot of them are very small in terms of what their revenues were last year at the same period of time. There were businesses that had to shut down for an extended period of time. So that included event centers and restaurants and hair salons. A lot of them they all had to be in Franklin County. And so I think downtown Pasco those businesses had a chance to apply for this, because I would say only 20 to 30% of those businesses were able to get any of the other CARES Act funding as well too. So it was much needed for a lot of those folks. So we're happy to help out. Rolando with Soul Case Management and their team did an excellent job. We're hoping to get those checks out this week and make sure that we're able to bring everything all together for them and complete that project. But I think hopefully in the future, we suspect that there may be some more CARES funding coming down, especially as what we see on the national landscape. More restrictions are occurring that our representatives in Washington, D.C. will come up with another package sooner rather than later. And we're hopefully able to help out when that time comes to go through and have a chance to help the county disperse more funds if needed. So, but definitely a success story, and we're happy to help out with that. And the team did a really good job in terms of the board of directors of identifying, of putting it together, and the parameters we had to follow. It wasn't easy, and we were definitely under the gun, because all this money has to be spoken for by the end of November, and all the reporting as well too. So we still have some work ahead of us, but we're happy to help, and hopefully in the future we can do the same thing. So that's kind of what's been going on at the chamber. There's been some other things, but in terms of newsworthy events, that's kind of the chamber update. I guess with that, Jason, I'll throw it to you. We got a little time. We did some introductions at the in the virtual networking, but feel free if you want to try to conduct that. But I'll let you make the call, and then from there, I know Kevin has a message for his sponsorship, and then we can get into our keynote speaker.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, my name is Jason Hogue, and I am the current president of the Pasco Chamber. And at this moment, I just wanted to introduce our sponsor today, who's making all this happen. His name is Kevin Williams. He's with IFC Insurance. IFC was founded in 1970, and they're celebrating 50 years in business. That's more than I've been around on this earth. So, Kevin, give us a little sponsorship message. Tell us about you guys and about your company.
I'll do that, and thank you, Jason. Thank you, Colin. First of all, I want you all to know I haven't lost my mind. What started out as the inability to get a haircut turned into a bit of a COVID-19 protest, or just to show you what can change during a pandemic. I'm a visual. But I'll try to be brief. I want to get to what's really interesting, and that'd be our Chief Roske today. Our business was established in 1970, and I looked forward to a big 50-year celebration, but COVID kind of put a damper on that. We started out in what was called and maybe still today is called the Grigg office building, with an entrance on Lewis Street, down in where you would imagine Griggs, on the Lewis Street side. And we were there till 2004, and at that time bought our building here on 20th, 1103 North 20th, across the street from Umpqua Bank. I get a cup of coffee when I plug Umpqua Bank. So anyway, my dad used to describe our business as being all about people and their money, but none of the things they own. So to kind of differentiate ourselves from the property and casualty type insurance folks, we are about people and their money. So myself, I was born here in Pasco, which so that makes me a local, I guess, for sure. Grew up, graduated. I'm a Pasco Bulldog. I went to WSU to study music education. Went broke. Had to come home to work, and I did a few different things, and then my dad coaxed me into the business. So here I am, 38 years later. I'm an avid snow skier and a musician. I'll camp and fish anytime anybody wants to. Love doing those kind of things. Anything outdoors, I'm happy. I've been married 36 years to the same woman. I have 2 kids, and they're not really kids anymore. One of them is 30 years old, and the other's 27. I'm pretty proud of those guys, or kids. I got 1 boy and 1 girl. He's a chemical engineer, graduate at WSU. And he's a Pasco Bulldog as well. And my daughter, who dares to be different, she graduated from Chihuahua and the University of Washington. So I've got a cougar, I've got a husky. I mean, I don't know what to do. I married a bomber, so I'm totally confused. But anyway, my daughter's an operations manager for New York Life, and doing really well there. I've been highly involved in my community all throughout since I got started in business, and I got to say, being a Pasco Chamber president in 2002, all these dates are making me old, but that's fine. In 2002 was a real highlight. That was back in the days when luncheons were weekly. I mean, every Monday we went down to the Red Lion, ate lunch, and had a seriously exciting chamber meeting. So I got licensed in 1985 to do what I'm doing now. I've forever been a member of my professional association, which is the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. And I take my continuing education requirements real seriously. I don't just get the hours. I look for things that are important and study those. So if I had to put myself in a perfect world going forward, or I don't know, maybe tell you what I want to really do is just to work with families and business owners to save money for important things, but probably most important, retirement, and then protect them against the possibility of their time being too short, or possibly their time being too long. Those are the kind of things I do. Life insurance, annuities, long-term care, and investment products. So I love Pasco. I love the Tri-Cities, and certainly love the Pasco Chamber. Thanks for the opportunity, Colin.
I got to ask a question real quick, Jason. So I remember, or I did run across the weekly meetings, and I know that Jim Toomey was always the MC of that. Was there anybody else that had to? Did you ever have to be the weekly MC for the Pasco Chamber weekly meetings?
Are you talking to me? Okay, I thought that you asked Jason. I don't really understand your question. I got to be honest.
I saw that Jim Toomey for many years, the old Port of Pasco director, had to be the MC for the weekly meetings. That talk about a job. I was wondering if anybody else ever relieved him of that, and did you ever have to step up and be the weekly MC of those meetings?
No, I just ran meetings for 12 months and called it good. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll send it back to you, Jason.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Kevin. And as someone who works in the insurance industry, who's been a part of the professional association with Kevin for probably nearly a decade now, there's no one in the business. There might be a few equals, but there's no one better at it, at insurance planning, not necessarily insurance products, but insurance planning than Kevin Williams and IFC Insurance. So great company. And I do see a future PSA for the chamber around COVID and getting through it so we can get Kevin a damn haircut. So I feel like that is going to work itself out quite nicely. Thank you, Kevin, for that as well. Now let's move on to our keynote speaker today. Our keynote speaker is Pasco Police Chief Ken Roske. Ken, he was appointed police chief in October 2019. He's become the first police chief who was chosen from within the department in the last 50 years. With a department of 94 employees that continues to grow, Chief Roske oversees a department that strives at leading progressive, community-centric policing innovations focused on public safety. Chief Roske started his career with the Pasco Police Department in 1986, right about the time a young, fresh, right out of being broke in college, Kevin Williams got his licensing. First serving as a Pasco police officer, where he worked in multiple assignments as a canine handler, field training officer, and later advancing to sergeant and watch commander. Continuing through his career at Pasco, he was promoted to captain in 2004, spending time overseeing both field operations and support operations. In 2017, he was promoted to the deputy chief, where he oversaw internal operations and community outreach. During this time, he successfully led the police department through state and national accreditation programs, making Pasco one of only 2 police agencies in Washington state to achieve dual accreditation through WASPC and CALEA. Welcome, Chief Roske.
Thanks, Jason. Give me just a second to see about sharing my screen here. Okay, where is it? There we go. These are always the challenges. Is that visible now?
We still see your handsome face.
That's wonderful. Maybe we should have practiced this, huh? Give me 1 second. I see I've got some options. Share that one. Any better?
It's coming through. There we go. We got it.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. And of course, thanks to the Chamber for the invite. And Kevin Williams for your sponsorship. And certainly for your help to many young police officers, including myself, with that task of trying to understand insurance and benefits. So thank you very much. Your company, Conroe, or IFC, have been involved with the Pasco Police Department for a long time. So as you can see on the screen, I have a shameless shout out to the Rotary fellows that are sitting in the audience with us as well. So I can, when we do actually get back to having Rotary meetings, I won't be fined now, and we can move on. One of the difficult, thank you for the great introduction as well, Jason. I appreciate that. And certainly my time in Pasco, proud to serve in this community for 3 decades, and now certainly as the police chief. Real quick, I'm married. All 3 of my kids are graduates of the Pasco school system. And for some reason, all 3 of them still live in Pasco, and a couple of grandkids that are being raised in Pasco. So the future is obviously bright, and I'm excited about where it's going, and I'm excited to be a part of it as the leader in the police department. You know, when I got asked to make this talk or this talk here, the problem I had was trying to narrow it down to a small enough scope that I could accomplish something in a few minutes with you and still leave time for questions. There is so much to cover, so much with COVID, so much of what's going on across the nation with policing, and certainly with our police department. So bear with me as I try and race through some slides, and I will click through them quickly and try and leave us some time at the end for some hopefully some great questions. I think it's always important that I start out our talks understanding the foundation of this police department. Many of you have heard of community policing. It's been the foundation of this department since the late 90s, when Chief Dennis Austin brought this concept, a unique concept of fighting crime and disorder with partnerships in the community, ultimately solving problems and recognizing that the police aren't the answer to all of communities' problems. And sometimes we get asked to help solve problems, and we certainly are willing to do that, but we're only successful because of the partnerships that we are able to develop. And since the late 90s, I'm very proud of those partnerships and where we are today. I'm proud of Chief Austin and bringing that policing philosophy to us. But more importantly, the community, business owners who have continued to support this police department through some challenging times. In the late 90s or late 80s, when I started as a police officer, it was an interesting time. It was a rough time, high crime rates. We ranked in those years at having some of the highest crime rates on the West Coast. Today, that's not the case. It's a very safe community, and we're very proud of that. But certainly because of your partnerships. I throw this slide up only as it kind of leads into my next topic, which has been some challenges for us, and that will be recruiting. But Sir Robert Peel is what we refer to as the founder of modern policing from the 1800s. But the very important piece that I want to point out to you is the police are the public, and the public are the police. And that is so true. And maybe what gets lost in national rhetoric that gets thrown out there is people sometimes get the perception, and I suppose maybe some police departments don't make close enough effort at keeping their police officers grounded to their communities. But it is so important that we remember that the police officers out there in the field every day are you. They're your kids, they're your children, they're your friends, they're your kids as coaches, they're your neighbors. And we can't forget that. And I think if police departments will continue to drive that home, it certainly is going to help with the national rhetoric. And I'll speak more about what the nation's looking like down the road. So how do we get there? One of the things that we did recently was, as the new chief, I took the opportunity to meet with our staff, each of those one-on-one, and walk through our mission, vision, and our core values, and what those mean individually, and then holistically as a group, what our vision is. And I just kind of threw out and read some key points of that statement or those statements. And I think what I want our officers and certainly our community to understand is these key words that I've highlighted in red, and they really go to the core of who we are. And why is this important? Why does this statement hang across the police department? And why does each of our officers get a copy of this for them to carry with them, for them to understand? It's because at 2 o'clock in the morning, with a policy manual of 80 some chapters and 400 plus pages, you can't remember every single word in those policy statements. So what we ask our officers is to, when they're policing this community, when they're interacting, we can certainly work our way past policy violations. We can retrain you. Maybe we need to change the policy potentially, but what we can't get over and what will be potentially career ending to our officers and when we're holding our officers accountable is if you violate these mission, vision, or core values. If you violate those in your heart of hearts when you're out policing the community, I'm sorry, but we're going to have difficult times getting over those. So that's why it's so important and why we drive that home to our officers and why I think as a public, you should certainly know that that's how we are approaching our dealings every day, 24 hours a day as we're interacting with the public. I'm racing right along here, but recruiting challenges. We knew this was coming as the anti-police rhetoric, certainly in May and even before, started gripping the community, gripping the country, and how that resonated to Pasco. Fortunately, we still enjoy great community support. I cannot tell you other than to thank you, each of you who have friends, yourselves personally, who have taken the opportunity to thank our officers for what they do, have taken the opportunity to bring us donuts, that was a joke, and all of the other cookies and gifts and things in recognition of supporting our officers and supporting this police department. I certainly appreciate that. But we knew as much support as you personally give us, the anti-police rhetoric was going to be a challenge across the country. And we are certainly seeing those challenges as we look at recruiting officers for this police department and for this community. We recently pulled an entry-level list of oral boards. We usually fill a two-day entry-level oral boards very quickly. Just this last month, it was very, very difficult for our human resources department to fill 2 days of entry-level oral boards, just simply because the interest isn't there for people to serve in a law enforcement capacity in their communities. So it's a challenge for us, and we're not going to sit back. We're going to rise to those occasions, and we're going to continue to look for officers that want to police a diverse community, police this community. Why are there some of the challenges? I've listed a couple of them there. You know, the gear, the requirements, the technology that we have that are facing us. But officers are better trained. There's stricter selection, background testing. Officers are have a higher education level than ever before, and the experience level that we're bringing, whether from the military, from the private sector, from those right out of college, the experience that they're bringing to us is much greater than we've ever seen in society. That's not the challenge that we're having. The challenge is getting people to come and apply for us. And my plea during these discussions is to get your sons and daughters, neighbors and friends that have an interest in law enforcement, not to shy away from it. I've seen a lot of challenges in 3 decades of policing, and every time we've come across challenges, whether that was Rodney King in the 90s, the gang issues and extreme violence in the mid to late 90s that we experienced, drugs and whatnot. But every time this country and this community has had law enforcement challenges, we have risen above it, and we are better because of it. And I am confident that law enforcement is going to be stronger and better going into the future. And so we aren't going to lower our standards. And I don't think we have to lower our standards. We just have to do a better job. My plea to you is to help me in that job at recruiting additional staff and additional officers. So to make that easy, we've employed a new recruiting platform. The days of, I'm trying to look in the screen here. Most of us in this screen are used to going to filling out a job application. Maybe some of the 30-year-olds and so on in here might remember actually going on to a computer screen and filling out a job application. Maybe calling a recruiter, or a person inside the city or where you wanted to get a job to get some information. That doesn't occur anymore. What our new applicants, with the generation, and we pick on this generation a lot, and we shake our heads at them, but they are extremely talented, and they're going to serve us as public servants. They're going to do a great job. We just have to get out of our own way and find ways to recruit them. And I've thrown up on the screen this new platform, and you can actually text join PPD to this number, and there will be an interactive process that this generation that we are looking for, will be very familiar and encouraged to interact with this application, and then have that work its way off into our human resources and our recruiting department to help us actually finalize and stay in touch with those viable candidates. And we don't lose them because we don't have the technology to stay up with them. So anyways, recruiting, I feel confident, great people out there. I just need you to help us find the very best talent that we have. Community partners, we reach out to a lot of different aspects with our community policing philosophy. And I threw a few of them up here. This is not all of them by any means, and I apologize for those that we didn't put. There's only so many boxes that I can fit on the screen. But Pasco's success and the culture of this police department, of your police officers that are out there every day, is their ability to interact. COVID-19 has created challenges for everybody, certainly the chamber and all the businesses, but certainly for us as well. We have created in the last 20, 25 years, the opportunity to get out of our police cars, to get out of these offices and communicate with you, communicate with our public, find out what they need from their police department. We don't have all of the solutions or all of the answers. We're the subject matter experts, and we are good at what we do, but we need your partnership. And because of these community partners listed here and many others, we have seen success. The culture of those officers that are out there working every day and every night, I almost feel like this COVID-19 and the anti-police rhetoric that got thrown on us in May after what we saw, the horrific acts in Minneapolis. I almost feel like, as the police chief, as your police department, as your officers, that we're out right now trying to gain your confidence, keep your confidence, engage with you in maybe a boxing arena with I describe it as having our hands tied behind our backs and trying to be in this boxing match. If we could take the gloves off, we could untie our hands and let us go out there, I am confident that not only the Pasco Police Department, but law enforcement across this country would certainly win back the public's confidence. A lot of the rhetoric that you're seeing out there is just simply false. And not being able to hold our coffee with the cops, have Citizens Academy, actually stand in front of you at the chamber luncheon and have my hands up in the air and talking and engaging with you is a hindrance to us. And it's certainly a challenge. A little shameless shout out for our police foundation that we have just launched this last year, a month, with COVID, some great community partners. Mike Miller, a board member, founding board member, is on the call with us. I didn't see any of the other foundation members. But I think what's important to understand and why I'm so encouraged about this police foundation is the three core focuses that they have identified for themselves. The first one is benevolence, or they've translated that into the Pasco Cares Fund. Training and innovation, making sure that your police department, your police officers have supportive training and innovation. The city has been very good. We have great relations with our regional training partners, and the city has been very good at sponsoring and supporting financially our police equipment and police training. But the foundation wants to partner and do more to make sure that our officers are the best that they can be. And then, of course, morale and community engagement, just exactly what I was talking about, taking the opportunity to recognize our officers that are in this community, the great work that they do, and recognizing what they do in addition to community engagement. I'm going to back up to the Pasco Cares Fund and explain just a little bit about what that does for us. And oftentimes our officers see the worst that society has. Fortunately, it's only about 4 or 5% about what we do. But when they do see the worst of society, social services are closed at 2 o'clock in the morning. And maybe somebody just needs a tank of fuel, or they need a hotel room to stay in, or they need a box of diapers. They need a bus ticket to get out of Pasco where they're going. We now have funds available. We can't spend taxpayer dollars to do that. That's not the way we're set up. But because of the foundation and the Pasco Cares money that they have, each of our shift supervisors has a small amount of money dedicated that they can go draw on. They're on Visa cards, and they can make that helping hand to those that need it, offer that to them. It's audited through a receipt system that goes back to the foundation. And so we're very pleased at just in a year what we've been able to accomplish and where we're at. So more to come on that. I put a couple of links down in there if you want to email for more information, or you maybe want to follow us on the Pasco on social media for the foundation and where we're going with it. Of course, there would be no good opportunity for a update or a state of the union of where Pasco Police Department is without me throwing some bar graphs up. There's got to be some nerds in here that are going to be intrigued by this. And the great news is crime rate is down, and part 1 and part 2 crime rates. Part 1 crime rates are the serious ones. We can't impact those much. Part 2 crime rates, we have a lot more latitude at impacting those with our policing attitudes. And you'll see that those are certainly down. I will unfortunately attribute that to COVID. COVID has kept people in. A lot of activities that we would normally enjoy ourselves at, we're not doing. And so helped us drive the crime rate. There are some areas that we are very concerned about. You'll see them on the charts and the graphs. And those areas that have driven up, I think, are largely due to COVID. Some of the property crimes and stuff, with people being frustrated, having a lot of time on their hands, certainly our youth. And so we're certainly focusing on those. And I think as time goes on, we'll get a better handle on those. One area, and I'm just looked at my clock, making sure I'm doing all right. I'm going to keep zipping. One area that I am not proud of, and that is our opioid fentanyl abuse in this community. You'll see the fentanyl seizures there from 2019, just in a year, and we're not even done with 2020. And you will see the rise that this is just Pasco seizures, by the way. That doesn't reflect the rest of the region that we see the increase. And this is a whole presentation on itself, but I just would be remiss if I spoke about crime being down and I didn't bring the ugly facts to you of what we're seeing with fentanyl and the overdose. You'll see the lethal aspect that is associated with fentanyl. So in 2018, we had 3 fentanyl overdoses. In 2019, that's, the number's not in there, but that's 2. And then in 2020, again, the year's not over, and we have already had 8 fatalities to fentanyl overdoses. So sorry to rain on that part of it, but as proud of as I am with the crime reduction, the fentanyl piece and drug abuse is certainly alive and real. So now on to some more, I don't know if it's exciting, but certainly innovative things that we are looking to do as a police department, is recognizing that customer service is at the key of what we, as a police department, are going to be measured on our success. Certainly crime rates, certainly people feeling safe is important. And how do we measure that other than customer service surveys? So we'll be rolling out a new piece of technology next year that will allow us to engage with the community, much like you might see Amazon or Domino's on here, where we can, as you call into our 911 center, we'll be able to give you an automated response for those using cellular phones on a text message on the status of your call. So kind of give you an idea, depending on how busy we are, you can have an appreciation for whether that's going to be a half-hour response by an officer, 15 minutes, or whether that's going to be pushed out to a couple of hours. And that gives you as the customer, if it's not emergent, maybe we can reschedule or do some things differently with you. The whole process is to increase transparency and accountability. And this is in cooperation with what the City of Pasco's council will be adopting, and that is for all of the departments to focus on customer service and how we can continue to serve the citizens and you better. Certainly from a police department, that's what we want to do. This is just a quick what that status might look like coming to your phone. If you're a tech guy, you'll appreciate that. If you're not a tech guy, I think you'll still appreciate having an understanding of what the police department is doing, and if your call has been delayed. And then certainly if it isn't a serious nature and it's been assigned maybe to a detective for outreach, you'll get status updates as your case moves along through the detective division or other places, and maybe ends up in the prosecutor's office or doesn't end up anywhere for whatever reason. And it just kind of gives you a peace of mind rather than wondering what happened. And we can hopefully, from an automated standpoint, do a better job at keeping you apprised. So before I get into questions and answers, some key accomplishments this year. Jason already gave us some great accolades for our national accreditation through CALEA and Washington State. Those are the best practice by our peers across the nation as far as CALEA standards, the national standards, the most difficult standards for a police department to adhere to. Not only does it require that our policies and procedures are sound and of best practices, legally sound and of best practices. Those are peer reviewed. We have to submit proofs, standards of proof with each of those. And then those are reviewed with an online and an on-site auditor who comes on site and actually ensures that what we say we're doing. It's not just in the policy. Anybody that's been in large corporations or even your smaller corporations, it's certainly easy to put a policy in place. It's much more difficult to make sure it's being followed. I talked about overdose mapping, or the overdose of fentanyl. And because it's so serious, we've implemented a mapping database so we can catalog each of those overdoses, certainly fentanyl, but other overdoses. So we can work at targeting how those are occurring, where they're occurring, and get a better handle at saving people's lives. We have drug systems that can reverse some drugs. You might have heard them referred to as Narcan, as a popular one that all of our officers carry, not only for the public but certainly for our own officers. Drug overdose, because of the small amount that it takes from fentanyl, it's an extreme concern for our officers as they're searching and dealing with subjects and handling evidence to ensure that that they're not harmed as well. Our homeless liaison program just was stood up. It'll be it's launched, and we'll have some successes next year. And that program is to have officers that have partnered with social services and find opportunities, rather than just law enforcement coming in contact with homeless people and then moving them around or arresting them and putting them in jail, which isn't the best or the final solution. Our officers can get them to some wraparound services and get them the help they need. As I speed this up a little bit, mental health professionals embedded with our officers. That's a program that puts mental health out in the field, so our officers have ready access when people need mental health services. Unfortunately, those in mental health crisis often are drug induced. So it's not simply because they have a mental health issue, it's because it's drug induced. And so to have those partners with us in the field where we can navigate the mental health system and not put them in jail if we don't need to, can we actually get them the help and the services they need? You might be hearing of New York is the one that just came out last week, where they're not going to be sending law enforcement officers to mental health calls unless there's a weapon or it's violent. And I think that's extremely dangerous. And I think what people are missing, certainly in Pasco and in Washington State, but Pasco, and in fact, I can speak for the Tri-City region, the metro region here. All of your officers are very well equipped and trained to handle mental health issues. They all have critical incident training, advanced training. They are the very best people to handle those crises when they're first being encountered. What they aren't equipped, and what law enforcement should not be used for, is that extended use. Once we get the crisis under control and it's no longer violent and it's no longer a threat, how can we get professionals in there to deal with them so they don't have to go to jail? Law enforcement ends up in that wall. We're very well equipped with dealing with the crisis, very well equipped with officers dealing with armed subjects, trying to talk them down, escalation, de-escalation techniques. But we aren't equipped. Our only option is jail. So with having mental health officers embedded, we now can lateral those issues and use mental health professionals to get them the real help that they need. And then we've completed our implementation of the body-worn camera project. All of our field officers are deployed with body-worn cameras, certainly as a police accountability, transparency, but also when we look at prosecuting crimes and criminals, it gives us the opportunity to have some best evidence that we can present. We have a community engagement team that after Minneapolis, we were able to roll out and get that team embedded, or I'm sorry, get that team to work closely with people that maybe didn't have the desire, maybe they were working, or maybe they didn't know what to do after they were on a protest line because they didn't like what happened in Minneapolis. Now they have to go to work Monday morning and they're still feeling frustrated. So we had a team that we could get out and answer those questions, do some outreach, and ensure those people in our community, anyone in our community, that the police department is listening and that we are certainly out there engaging with them. And what they saw in Minneapolis, or maybe in a very small few other cities that got national headlines, is not occurring at the local level, certainly in the Pasco Police Department or in the metro region here. And then you'll notice informational videos on those critical incidents that we were able to push out and help answer many of those questions after we've had to have officer involved shootings and ensure that the public gets those, get a little better understanding of where we are in the case, recognizing that it can be and will be many, many months before the investigation is complete. But I don't think our public should expect to wait many months for some initial response of what we know. So we were able to create those videos. All right. I think I zipped through those quick enough. And now I think I left a few minutes for question and answers as I try and, oh, there we are. We're back onto the screen where I can see you. All right. Questions? Well, that's perfect.
Ken, Chief Roske.
Kevin, call me whatever you want.
You know, I think there's things as business owners we can do to make our properties safer and reduce crime and make the police's job easier to do the job that we would ask. Who do we go to in the department to figure those things out?
Sure. Just call our main number, 545-3421, and ask for a area resource officer to contact you and your business that you have some requests for crime prevention. And they'll be glad to come out and talk about lighting, and then certainly other things that you can do to make sure that you and your staff are doing things for crime prevention, but you and your staff are safe as well. We work very closely with the school district and with Columbia Basin College for that type of population, but we can certainly come to your individual businesses as well.
Thank you.
Chief Roske, this is Ann Hayden Ray. I'm interested in whether you're finding officers from the west side of the state, particularly Seattle. You know, we've read and heard stories of the exodus from that department through frustration. If any of those individuals are showing interest in working in your police department.
So right now we don't have, as of a couple of weeks ago, in the what they're called lateral officers that come to us with experience on a different less than the entry level officers. We don't have any right now. I think Kennewick and Richland have each picked up some, but we don't have any from those agencies right now.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, could you speak to the city of Pasco had some traffic cameras on, I think, Burton and 68 and Court and 20th. It's been a couple years, so is there any update on how that's going and any of the impacts that it's had?
Yeah, so it's just 1 year now. I think it was stood up in August of last year, and it actually went operation in September, with us actually taking enforcement action through the mail system. So we don't have a lot of data in just a year, but what we do have suggests that collisions are reducing and violations are reducing. So people are getting the message. It's just too hard to hang our hat that is a continually successful program after a year, but we are encouraged by what we saw in the very first year.
How can we get more involved with the foundation?
So I think there's, where's the email address? Mike Miller, you got the email address in front of you?
I don't, but you can contact me, Jason, and I know we can actually call in. If you can put it on the chat line, that'd be great.
Thank you.
But just for you to know, Jason, over this last 6-8 months that we've been in existence, we have Kelly Balcom, who's our president and one of the co-founders, along with Charlie Grigg and myself, and we're getting ready to add another one. But so far, we've been able to raise over 30,000. I think we're getting closer to 50 now. And so there's been a lot of activities with the Visa cards that the officers can give out. I would also just give a shout out to Officer Ray Aparicio, Kevin, who has come and spoke at our church. And so it's not just for businesses, but for individuals and churches as well. You're seeing the Fuzz Bear program that Kelly put out there. These just different ways that you can do shout outs for our officers is important, as well as our leadership. Ken's been doing a great job just leading the organization, going forward. And so we're pretty excited to be able to support the program.
Hey, Chief, it's Troy. So one of my, I think one of the big issues out there with all this anti-police is people have a very minimal to non-existent understanding of how these decisions are really made in real time. And it occurs to me we have a world-class training facility called Hammer. And I'm wondering if there's not a way to start running people through some of these exercises, like the video screens that you're familiar with, put them in semi-real world situations. Here's, you know what I mean? And let them experience that, because I think I've had the pleasure of doing that, and it definitely changes your perspective on what happened on a Friday night when some crazy, what appeared to be crazy guy came out the front door with a knife.
Yes, great question. We actually just last month purchased a portable, movable de-escalation center. It's made out of hard canvas tarps. It has windows, and it simulates buildings, and you can move around. So you have a bedroom and a living room, and officers have all of the tools at their disposal. Their firearm is transferred to a piece of device. It's actually their firearm, but it doesn't discharge real ammo, right? It's a UTM program, but it gives the officers, even better than a video screen, gives the officers the opportunity to come in with, if they've got a mental health professional with them, they can have that mental health professional. If they have a taser, they can have a taser. They can use their voice and everything else and use all of those to de-escalate the situation. And if they have to use lethal force, it's there for them. So it's we just purchased that. We've actually run an iteration through it, and we're excited about where that's going to go. And we're going to open that up regionally to all of the Tri-City agencies. Part of the problem we have with Hammer is it's expensive to use, and I think they're pretty busy. Probably not during COVID, but absent COVID, I think they're pretty busy out there with worldwide people attending it.
Yeah, so I would suggest you get that to the public. That's my point. Get the mayors and get city council people and get, you know what I mean? Get some of the naysayers in there and go, here, you got 10 scenarios. Let's see how many out of 10 you get right, because 8 of these you died.
So Troy, yeah, so you're ahead of us just a little bit, but yeah, we will be opening that up to bring in. In fact, maybe this would be a good group to select a few people to come and go through those scenarios with us and observe our officers go through that, because you're exactly right. People don't understand the level of training and competency of local law enforcement. And I think if they did, and they didn't just follow a headline that they're seeing in the media somewhere and actually delve into it, I think they would. I think they do have an appreciation for what their local cops are doing. Troy has a vested interest because he hears about it from his son, who's a deputy sheriff and works the line every single night. So he actually knows the competent level of the Tri-City and regional law enforcement.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Chief Roske? Awesome. Well, I see not. No one is raising their hands or waving at the screen or talking into their mute. So I assume that we're any more questions. So just want to thank everybody for joining us. Obviously, we want to thank Kevin Williams for his sponsorship. I want to thank Chief Roske for joining us, and I don't think we have enough time here to say thank you as much as we all want to yourself and your team.
No, thank you.
Keep the city protected. Also, keep an eye out for your Cut Kevin's Hair PSA in your email. Oh, we got another question, Rolando?
That people are making regarding police enforcement, and much appreciated. However, let's go back in history. Before Zambrano was unfortunate, we had the Zambrano incident. We met with the previous chief of police, the city manager, and a couple of police officers in my building, their conference room. We explained 5 different things that they were missing. One was bilingual officers, use of excessive force, and also mental health issues. Those 2 weeks prior to the Zambrano incident, at that time, the chief of police was no longer with us, and I think the new chief was a lot more open, was totally in disagreement. So was a couple of the officers that were mentioned today. Then we ended up on national news and international news. Though I understand that we don't all understand each other, maybe I would be happy to go to the Hammer place. I haven't been, it's been a while since I've left the military, so anytime I can get in the firing range is great for me. I enjoy it. But I think we all need to be open that one of the reasons that we've had issues is... Can you hear me? Now you couldn't hear me before?
No, but it sounded like it was awesome whenever you were saying. It sounded great. It looked like it sounded great.
Before the Zambrano incident, we met with the previous chief of police and a couple of police officers here in my building. The previous chief of police did not want to pay attention to what was going on. 2 weeks later, we had the Zambrano incident. I'd love to go out to the Hammer. Anytime that I could get back in the firing range after being out of the military for several years, I'm happy. I like to do it. But we have to being open that there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different things going on in our community. And until we all begin to understand each other and see where we're all coming from, because we all have different perspectives, that's all we're going to make our community much better for all of us and increase the economic opportunities we all have here. So I welcome the opportunity to go out to the Hammer. I also welcome the opportunity. We all have to keep open mind, but we're all coming in with different perspectives. My perspectives will be different than for some of you. Because when I get pulled up by a police officer, I can only think of the experience that I've had before. And trust me, they've not been positive. Thank you.
So thanks, Rolando. And I don't hope to set out the process that we can't improve. We certainly want to improve. We can only do that by being engaged with this community. And I'm not sure what the prior chief was talking about, but rest assured that we are going to move forward. We aren't looking back. We're going to be better as we move this agency forward. And the opportunities to make mistakes were certainly going to occur, but we're going to learn from them, and we're going to continue to be an inclusive community. And I think if you look back at the last few years at what we have done here and what we're planning to do going forward is our hiring practices of hiring culturally diverse people that want to work here in Pasco and want to police this community, not just be the police.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. And everybody have a great holiday week here coming up next week. December 14th is our next meeting. I'm sure Colin will get the invites out. Enjoy your day.